Hey, what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the 2023 Boxing Awards, and this video is going to be on the title win of the year. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So the title win of the year, what does that mean? What does that entail? Well, pretty much anytime a fighter is challenging for a world title, you know, that can qualify as a candidate. Now, in terms of unification bouts, for me, those are purely title wins, in my opinion. Yes, if you're a champion and you go into a unification bout, you know, and you retain the belt that you have, technically that counts as a title defense. But I'm talking about your mentality going into the fight. Excuse me. If your mentality is to capture more, to add more, then you essentially are a challenger. That's the way I see it. You either have a champion's mentality or a challenger's mentality in terms of you're defending what you have to keep, only what you have, or you're challenging for what somebody else has, you know, to add to what you might have. But you're always in a challenger's mode, in my opinion, for a title win of the year. So, so again, what does that mean? That means we're going to start at 122 and work our way all the way to heavyweight with any candidates. If a division had more than 3 candidates, I just did the top 3 for the most part. And that's how we're working that. So let's start 122 pounds, super bantamweight, and take a look at the candidates there. Now, we had 3 of them. First is Naoya Inoue's 8th round TKO of Stephen Fulton Jr. to capture the unified super bantamweight title. That is a finalist, so we will discuss that when we get to the top 10. Next is Naoya Inoue's 10th round knockout of Marlon Tapales to unify and capture all 4 world titles and become the undisputed super bantamweight champion at 122. That is also a finalist. We will get to that when we discuss the top 10. And the third candidate was Marlon Tapales's 12-round split decision over MJ Marajan Akhmadaliev to capture the unified title, the WBA and IBF unified title. And that is also a finalist, so we'll discuss that when we get to the top 10. At featherweight, the 3 candidates are as follows. First is Mauricio Lara's 7th round TKO of Lee Wood to capture the WBA featherweight title. Coming into this fight, Lee Wood did not have to take this fight. This fight was supposed to happen in September of 22, and it fell through. So Lee Wood could have taken on pretty much, you know, whoever he wanted, but he wanted Mauricio Lara, who was considered to be kind of the boogeyman of 126 at the time. Nobody really wanted to fight him. And you saw why. Lee Wood was winning this fight convincingly, outworking, out-hustling Mauricio Lara. Then he got caught with a vicious left hook in the 7th round and put down. And when he got up, his corner, his trainer, did not want to see him suffer more damage. He felt like he was too badly hurt, and he called a stop to the fight, and Mauricio Lara would capture the WBA featherweight title after losing considerably on all scorecards. Next up is Lee Wood's 12-round unanimous decision over Mauricio Lara to capture the vacant WBA title. The vacant WBA championship in May. Now, this one was supposed to be a rematch. It was a rematch. Lee Wood invoked his rematch clause on Lara, and the day before the fight, Lara would lose the championship on the scales as he came in overweight. And so the fight would go forward, but it would be vacant, and only Lee Wood would be able to win the championship. And Lee Wood proceeded to outbox and outwork Mauricio Lara for all 12 rounds this time and take a convincing unanimous decision to again become the WBA featherweight champion. The next candidate is Rafael Espinosa's 12-round majority decision over Robeisy Ramirez to win the WBO featherweight championship of the world. This is a finalist. We'll discuss this when we get to the top 10. At 130, we have the 3 candidates there are O'Shaquie Foster's 12-round unanimous decision over Ray Vargas. This is a finalist. He captured the vacant WBC title with this win. This is a finalist. We'll discuss this in the top 10. Next is Joe Cordina's 12-round split decision over Shavkat Rakhimov to capture the IBF title. Heading into this one, it was viewed as kind of a 50-50 fight, but Rakhimov had captured the vacant title that was stripped from Joe Cordina because he could not defend against Rakhimov because he suffered an injury. So Rakhimov went on to beat Zelfa Barrett to capture the title in the United Kingdom. Then he went back to the United Kingdom for a fight with Cordina. It was a good action-packed fight. They went at it, but Cordina scored a knockdown in the early rounds, and then toe-to-toe action back and forth. And after 12, the judges came back with a split decision win for Cordina as he became a 2-time super featherweight champ with the IBF title at 130. And the third candidate at 130 is Emmanuel Navarrete's 9th round TKO over Liam Wilson to capture the vacant WBO title. Navarrete was supposed to fight Oscar Valdez for the vacant title, but Valdez had to pull out with an injury. So Liam Wilson from Australia was plugged in here as Navarrete tried to make history and become only the 9th man, or I think the 9th or 10th man in history to become a 3-division world champion and hail from Mexico. Liam Wilson, though, did not make it easy. Liam Wilson, fighting the guy who's fighting in his 3rd weight class, put Navarrete down in the, I think it was the 4th round, and then Navarrete kicked it into gear. He methodically broke down Liam Wilson, busted him up, and stopped him in the 9th round to capture the WBO title and become a 3-division world champion. So, a good, solid victory right there. 140, we have 3 candidates as well. First is Shakur Stevenson's 12-round unanimous decision over Edwin De Los Santos to capture the vacant WBC title. Stevenson and De Los Santos got this fight because Devin Haney was moving up to 140. The WBC named him champion in recess in case he wanted to come back down and fight the winner. So Stevenson was first in line. Frank Martin bailed out of the fight, and then De Los Santos stepped in to take on Stevenson. A lot of people thought this was going to be a good fight, and this was Stevenson's crowning moment in a 3rd division at a young age to become a world champion. And these two guys did hardly anything. Stevenson just did barely enough to win most of the rounds, but it was really few and far between. Neither guy wanted to really go for it. I think De Los Santos landed the least amount of punches in CompuBox history of a title fight. You know, and it was such a bad fight, but Stevenson got the victory, but in very ugly fashion. The next candidate at 135 is Devin Haney's, or 140, I'm sorry. Oh, no, that was the only candidate at 135, I apologize. Now we got 140 pounds, junior welterweight, where we had 3 candidates there. The first was Devin Haney's 12-round unanimous decision over Regis Prograis to capture the WBC title. This is a finalist. We'll discuss that in the top 10. Next was Teofimo Lopez's, excuse me, 12-round unanimous decision over Josh Taylor to capture the WBO title. This was a finalist. We'll discuss this in the top 10. And the last candidate was Subriel Matias's 5th round TKO over Jeremias Ponce to capture the vacant IBF title. This fight took place in February, and Matias was coming in. You know, a lot of people liked his style, but he hadn't really fought anybody, and Ponce hadn't really fought anybody either. But Matias was the favorite coming in. But early on, it looked like Ponce was putting it on Matias, but this is just Matias' battle plan. He lets his opponent land punches and throw a lot in the first couple rounds, and then he starts to break his opponent down, and that's what he did with Ponce. Broke him down, beat him up, and after the 5th round, Ponce quit in his corner, and Subriel Matias would capture the vacant IBF world title and become the world champion. That was a nice win. 147, welterweight. We only got 1 candidate. That was Terrence Crawford's 9th round TKO victory over Errol Spence Jr. to unify all 4 titles and become the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. This is a finalist. We will discuss this in the top 10. 154, we didn't have any candidates. Nobody won a world title at 154 in 2023. So we did not have a candidate there. 160, middleweight. We only had one candidate, and that was Janibek Alamanhalai's 6th round TKO over Vicente Gualtieri to unify and become, or to unify the WBO and IBF titles and become the unified world champion. This is a finalist. We'll discuss this in the top 10. Next, 168 super middleweight. No candidates here, as nobody became a world champion at 168 in 2023. 175 light heavyweight. No candidates here. Nobody became a world champion at light heavyweight in 2023. 200 cruiserweight. We had 3 candidates there. First is Badou Jack's 12th round TKO over Ilunga Makabu to capture the WBC title. Now, this one was a surprise right here. Makabu was has been very controversial as a champion and was not, you know, he did not get ordered very often to make his mandatories, who have always been lined up, and this was another case. He would fight the former 2-division champion Badou Jack, who was 39 years old, and a lot of people thought this was a joke of a fight and that Makabu was going to dominate Jack, who hadn't really done anything at cruiserweight yet. He hadn't really beaten anybody, and a lot of people felt at 39 that Jack was going to get rolled over on by the natural cruiserweight Makabu, and it was the exact opposite. Jack busted up and beat up Ilunga Makabu, dominating him, and then went for the knockout and stopped him in the 12th round to capture the WBC cruiserweight title and become a 3-division world champion impressively. Next is Noel Gavor's 3rd round knockout of Ilunga Makabu to capture the vacant WBC title. Badou Jack had claimed after winning the title, he claimed a couple months later that he wanted to move up and fight for the WBC's Bridgerweight title, which is the title between cruiserweight and heavyweight. It ranges from 200 to 220. And, you know, people weren't sure when we were going to see Jack back, but then the title went vacant, meaning that Jack was dead serious about that. The WBC title went vacant, and Noel Gavor, the mandatory #1 contender, was put in to fight for the title against the former Czech Makabu. And this one didn't last long. Gavor, who was robbed a few years ago against Maris Breidis, went out there and destroyed Ilunga Makabu in his first crack at a world title, stopping him in only 3 rounds to become the world champion impressively. And the final candidate at 200 pounds cruiserweight is Chris Billam-Smith's 12-round unanimous decision over Lawrence Okolie to capture the WBO world title. This is a finalist, so we'll discuss this when we get to the top 10. And finally, at the heavyweight division, there is no candidate, as nobody became a world champion at heavyweight in 2023. Now, before we move on and talk about the top 10, just to give you an example of last year's top 10, or last year's winner for title win of the year, that belonged to Jermell Charlo's 10th round knockout of Brian Castano to unify all 4 titles at 154 and become the undisputed super welterweight champion. That was my title win of the year in 2022. So from 10 to 1, let's take a look at the top 10 title wins of the year in 2023. Number 10 goes to Chris Billam-Smith's 12-round majority decision victory over Lawrence Okolie. Lawrence Okolie was the boogeyman at cruiserweight. Because of his height and his style, he was a tall guy that boxed. Nobody really was lining up to fight him. After Okolie had a kind of a lackluster performance against David Light, he wanted to return quickly, and in late May, Chris Billam-Smith stepped in an all-UK battle, and Billam-Smith surprisingly knocked Okolie down a few times and held on in the end to secure a close 12-round majority decision and become the new world champion. So this is a big upset, and it was a big victory over, again, the guy that was kind of the most feared guy to fight at cruiserweight 200 pounds. So that was a big win. Number 9 goes to Rafael Espinosa's 12-round majority decision over Robeisy Ramirez. Espinosa was was wildly unknown. He had an undefeated record, a lot of knockouts, but he hadn't fought anybody of even close to the level of Ramirez. And Ramirez was rolling since becoming world champion earlier in the year when he dominated former champion Isaac Dogboe and then got a victory in Japan to retain his belt. But there were people, myself included, that were looking at this going, this guy's young, he's a Mexican brawler, throws a lot of punches, and he has a 6-inch height and 6-inch reach advantage. And that's exactly what he used. His size and overwhelmed Ramirez, but Ramirez was in the fight very much. They were going at it. Ramirez scored a brutal knockdown on Espinosa, I believe in the 6th round. Espinosa looked like he could be out on his feet. He was staggering when he got up. The referee allowed the fight to continue, and Espinosa down the stretch closed the show and really put it on Ramirez and walked away with a close 12-round majority decision and a Fight of the Year candidate as he captured his first world title with that upset. Big win right there. Number 8 goes to O'Shaquie Foster's 12-round unanimous decision over Rey Vargas to capture the vacant WBC super featherweight title. Coming into this fight, Rey Vargas was an undefeated 2-division champ. He was actually the WBC featherweight champ at 126 and requested the opportunity to move up to 130 and try to become a 3-division world champion. Something that is rare in Mexico. Only, I think, 10 men before him had accomplished that feat. And Vargas wanted to be number 11 going in against O'Shaquie Foster, who, you know, some people thought he could win this fight. I picked him to win because of the style clash, but I don't think a lot of people saw him controlling the action and outworking and winning a clean decision, which he did. He completely controlled the action, the tempo, outworked, outboxed a tough Rey Vargas who had his moments, but he secured a clear 12-round unanimous decision and captured the vacant WBC title at 130, winning his first world title with a big win over a good champion from Mexico. Number 7 goes to Janibek Alamanhalai's 6th-round TKO victory over Vicente Gualtieri to unify the WBO and IBF middleweight titles and become the unified middleweight champ. Janibek going in was a clear favorite, but Gualtieri had pulled off an upset a few months earlier, defeating Esquiva Falchao to capture the vacant title. So, you know, a lot of people were paying attention to this one because Janibek really has not been seriously tested, you know, against a real legitimate fighter who hasn't suffered a defeat. A lot of people wanted to see what Gualtieri was going to bring to the table, and Janibek just dominated him. He broke down Gualtieri, didn't really seem to have any trouble with him, busting him up, breaking him down, and secured a 6th-round TKO victory and unified 2 of the 4 belts in a wide-open division at middleweight and really put himself right at the top of the division with a clear-cut victory, you know, as he holds half of the titles at 160. So, big win for Janibek right here. Number 6 goes to Marlon Tapalis's 12-round split decision over MJ Marajan Akhmadaliev to capture the WBA and IBF unified super bantamweight title at 122 pounds. This was a big win. Tapalis was a mandatory challenger, a former champ at 118, but he had already tried to win a world title a few years earlier against Ryosuke Iwasa and got stopped, and Iwasa would go on and lose to Janibek in a unification bout. Or no, he would go on to lose to Janibek later on. So, you know, not a lot of people were giving Tapalis a shot here to win this fight. Most people thought MJ was going to roll over him, as MJ and Stephen Fulton Jr. were both unified champions, and at the time Inoue had made his decision to move up and challenge Fulton. So that a lot of people were wondering and looking forward to a potential Inoue Akhmadaliev undisputed title clash. And MJ fought that way. The first half of the fight, he went out and was looking for one punch at a time, and instead of the normal Marlon Tapalis that comes forward and tries to fight and brawl, he stood back and boxed and allowed MJ to look for one punch as he counterpunched and really won majority of the first half of the fight. Second half of the fight, MJ turned it up a notch and started coming at him and throwing a lot of punches, but Taples continued to counterpunch, and he did well enough to secure a close split decision and capture the unified super bantamweight title, becoming a 2-division world champ. And that got Marlon Taples the undisputed title clash later in the year against the monster, Naoya Inoue. And so that even made this victory even that much bigger right there. So big win for Marlon Taples right there. Number 5, yes, we're in the top 5 now. That goes to Devin Haney's 12-round unanimous decision over Regis Prograis to capture the WBC 140-pound junior welterweight title. Devin Haney was coming off of the controversial victory over Vasily Lomachenko, and then even the backlash he got for not giving Lomachenko a rematch. So he decided to move to 140 and challenge Prograis, who was a guy who had been sitting in the top 3 to 5 in this division for quite some time. But Prograis was focused, wanted this victory here, and you know, Prograis wanted to stop Devin Haney. And after a lot of shit talking, they went into the fight, and Devin Haney completely shut down Regis Prograis, absolutely dominated him over 12 one-sided rounds, and became the WBC 140-pound champion with this victory, securing his a championship in a second weight class. So a big-time win for Devin Haney right here, left no doubt, and is sitting at the top of 140 now after that win. Number 4 goes to Teofimo Lopez's 12-round unanimous decision over Josh Taylor to capture the WBO junior welterweight title at 140. Heading into this fight, Josh Taylor was still considered to be the #1 fighter after giving up his undisputed title. He gave up 3 of his 4 belts, decided to hold on to the WBO belt. And Teofimo Lopez had a big cloud of doubt casted over him after, you know, lackluster performances. You know, a lackluster performance in his previous fight against Sandor Martin, and then even questioning himself if he still had it, as he had not had a great performance or an impressive performance since he had upset Vasily Lomachenko a couple years earlier. So there was a lot of doubt heading into this fight if Teofimo Lopez could beat Josh Taylor, who was coming in the favorite, and Lopez just cleanly outworked and outboxed Josh Taylor and won a clean and clear 12-round unanimous decision to become a 2-division world champion and put himself right at the top of 140 and got his old form back. So big-time win right there for Teofimo Lopez. Number 3 goes to Naoya Inoue's 8th-round TKO victory over Stephen Fulton Jr. to capture the unified WBC and WBO world titles at 122 pounds. Inoue had become undisputed champion at 122 about 7 months earlier and decided he wanted to move up to at 118, I'm sorry, and decided he wanted to move up to 122. And instead of looking at the number 2, 3, 4, 5 fighter in the division, which he had every right to do, he went straight after the #1 guy, Stephen Fulton Jr. And the added thing here that made this win so impressive was that Stephen Fulton presented a style that Inoue hadn't really encountered before, a pure boxing, counterpunching style, and he was the bigger man. And there was a lot of people that thought that Stephen Fulton was going to win this fight. It was wildly viewed as a 50-50 fight. I picked Inoue to win, but I thought it was going to be close, and he was going to have the most difficult time of his career. And he went out there, and this is probably his finest performance. He absolutely dominated Stephen Fulton Jr. Boxed him, hit him with power shots, controlled the action, and stopped him impressively in the 8th round to capture a championship in a 4th weight class. And that set the table for an undisputed title clash later in the year. Huge victory right here for Naoya Inoue. That's number 3. Number 2 goes to Naoya Inoue's 10th round knockout of Marlon Taples to unify all 4 belts at 122 pounds and become the undisputed super bantamweight champion of the world at 122 pounds. Now, even though Fulton posed a bigger threat, this was a bigger fight because Undisputed was on the line. But not just Undisputed, Naoya Inoue made history with this victory over Marlon Taples. There wasn't any doubt in most people's mind that he was going to blow out Marlon Taples and beat him in this fight. but it was about making history as he became only the second man to become an undisputed champion in a second weight class in the 4-belt era of boxing. So anyway, to just go out there as expected and completely deliver by dominating a good, solid veteran in Marlon Tapales and knocking him out and becoming the undisputed champion after Terrence Crawford just did it a few months earlier was just so impressive. And that was a fantastic victory, well-deserved, and that's number 2 on the year. But number 1 for me in terms of title win of the year absolutely goes to Terrence Crawford for his 9th round technical knockout victory over Errol Spence Jr. to unify all 4 welterweight titles and become the undisputed welterweight champion of the world at 147 pounds. This was a dream match that people wanted to see for years. Promoters messed it up. These two even messed it up after Crawford became a free agent. These two messed it up by neither man wanting to agree to all terms. So the fight was supposed to happen in 2022 and it fell through a couple times. Crawford went on and fought David Avanesian at the end of the year, and Spence didn't fight at all. And Spence and Crawford came back to the table and finally agreed to terms for a 2023 clash for undisputed. And they went in July, and I picked Crawford to win this fight. I always felt Crawford was the better fighter. But the way he completely dominated and shut down Errol Spence Jr. and just completely toyed with them, played with them, and busted them up and beat them up and stopped them impressively in the 9th round to become the undisputed champion. He also became the first man in the 4-belt era to become a 2-division undisputed world champion. It was just history making across the board. It was a fantastic performance, and Terrence Crawford just absolutely, that is a title win of the year. And Errol Spence, you know, I don't want to hear the excuses about his eye or about the weight draining, because if his eye was that badly beat up before the fight, why didn't he just postpone the fight and get surgery earlier in the year and fight Crawford later in the year? You know, I don't understand that. And then the weight draining thing is bullshit, because nobody was talking about his weight or the car crash that he was in when he dominated Danny Garcia, when he dominated Yordenis Ugas, probably his 2 best victories, you know, outside of maybe the Mikey Garcia win. Nobody mentioned any of that when he won those 2 fights, but they mentioned it after he got destroyed against Crawford. So I call bullshit on that, but Terrence Crawford, such a fantastic performance. This was the 2023 title win of the year. Terrence Crawford's undisputed title win over undefeated Errol Spence Jr. at 147 pounds. So these are my 2023 boxing awards. This was the title win of the year. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.